So welcome back to another edition of the Heart to Heart podcast. And my guest today is Dr. John. So Dr. John is a compounding pharmacist, and he's actually been practicing functional medicine for 15 years. So I'm really happy to have him on the show. So welcome to the show, John.
Dr. Mike, thanks so much. And it's an honor to be on your podcast. And speaking of which, it is Thanksgiving Day in the United States, but I'm always down for a good discussion anytime.
Well, I really appreciate you, doing this on, one of your probably rare off days, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone listening to this.
Hey, thank you.
So John, I really wanted to have you on the show for a few different reasons. Seems like, a lot of the information that you put out is similar to the information that I put out as well. So, I'm happy to learn from you today for, a few different things, but gut health is something that you chat about a lot. I see that you chat about saunas a lot. And low testosterone. So I'm pretty happy to get into all of it with you. But just before we get started, can you give everyone maybe a little bit more of a background on you?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Dr. John Kim, and I've been a compounding pharmacist and been doing functional medicine the last 15 years, just as Dr. Mike actually had said before. So my overall concentration is doing, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, pain management, autoimmune disease, as well as in treating some of the chronic infections like Lyme disease that's really big right now in my area. But a lot of these chronic conditions that the patients might be suffering from, I always look to treat the root cause and trying to find that out. So we actually have an active consultation practice at our pharmacy, along with the compounding, and we do consult with a lot of practitioners around the area between New Jersey and New York. And especially with the social media growing at this point, in terms of the overall boundary that we actually have is really non-existent. So I'm actually really being excited about talking to many patients and doctors alike. And that is really an exciting time these days.
Yeah, I mean, I think now more than ever, we can actually help our patients, just as much almost online as we can in person. In person, you're kind of limited to, one patient at a time, obviously. But, when you're online, thousands of people can see, one tweet or one, Instagram post and can get, quite a bit of important information that can help their health. So, I think it's good that, people like yourself are, active online and helping patients that way. But also too, a lot of people probably are not familiar with the term functional medicine. So could you just explain that to us a little bit more before we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Functional medicine is actually quite popular in Canada as well. So a couple of my Canadian colleagues that I always look up to, I don't know if you know Sachin Patel in Toronto. Sorry. So big functional medicine guy up there. I always end up having to look up to him. So functional medicine deals with root cause of the disease. So when you're looking at the conventional medicine right now, it's all based on sections of the body. You're talking about cardiology, you're talking about orthopedic and etc., including infectious disease. Whereas if you look at the functional medicine side, you're looking at the holistic approach of a patient when you're looking at a disease model. So when you're looking at cardiovascular issues, including metabolic issues that patient might be going through, it's not just dealing with the endocrinologist or cardiologist. You have to look at the overall condition the patient might be going through, such as hormonal health, metabolic rate. You have to look at stress management, sleep issues, even including exercise and nutrition. All those factors come in terms of setting up a good foundation for a person's health. The issue is that when you're looking at these in a sectional approach, you're not looking at the root cause. And so when I first found out about overall functional medicine, this was basically back in 2005 when I was doing my clinical rotation in a hospital. And I saw that such a brokenness that's happening in the conventional medicine side that I was trying to find an answer toward, is there a way to treat patient based on not a root cause. I didn't even think about root cause aspect of it, but is there a way to really treat the patient so this way the patient does not have to be a revolving matter into coming to the hospital to treat the same crap that they're dealing with? And working with different alternative practitioners, that's when I found out, yes, there is something called functional medicine, and that this is a concentration that I want to get into, because it's not about dispensing medications. It's all about how do we empower the patient's overall health so this way they're able to get to the overall root cause of the issue and really help them coach and get to a better baseline.
Yeah, so basically, I think what functional medicine is, and what you're doing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not reacting to the person. You're really trying to prevent, right? So you really are practicing preventative medicine and trying to treat the whole body, as opposed to just like one symptom. Certainly, sometimes medicine can be great for eliminating that one symptom, but then once you stop taking that medication, the symptom may in fact come back, and you may still in fact have that underlying condition. And one thing that I think this is a pretty good transition period to make to say this is that in terms of like the gut microbiome, I mean, that's something that is not really discussed in mainstream medicine. I never heard of the gut microbiome when I was going through medical school. That was something I discovered after medical school, and I know that you talk about it quite a bit, and it seems to have a huge impact on various different factors in our body. So one thing would be relation to depression and anxiety, or overall mental health, because we know that serotonin is also produced in the gut, and I know that you've chatted a little bit about that. And then also too, in terms of gut health, your immune system. So it's estimated somewhere between 70%, I think upwards even 90% of your immune system is actually in your gut. So how do you tell your patients in general how to optimize their gut, and why should people be concentrating on their gut health? And I know that may take you 3 hours to answer that.
That's a boatload of questions I have to answer back. I mean, it's crazy, because if you think about overall functional medicine, we always concentrate and starting on the gut function first, right?
Okay.
Including, I just did a recent post about if the patient actually is dealing with psoriasis, allergies, ADD issues, etc. All those are concentrated based on how well the person's gut is actually functioning, and especially that microbiome is the biggest factor that comes through. If you're dealing with poor microbiome health, it also affects the person's mood as well. So I mentioned about 2 weeks ago that we all have 4 different brains. You're talking about the brain that's in our head, the heart. You're talking about our gut, and as well as the last factor is the microbiome. And it's really interesting how the gut bacteria plays an important role in terms of our immune health, how our mood is, how our digestion is going to be, how well we're able to handle stress, hormonal health as well, and as well as in dealing with the longevity aspect of it is also determined. And at the same time, right now with COVID-19 happening, there's a number of studies right now really showing that poor microbiome health equals to poor outcome in COVID-19. And
Yes.
So that hand to hand goes well with the immune health and how well that you are able to control your overall cytokine issue that you might be dealing with. Because if you think about the overall issue dealing with patients dealing with metabolic health where they have a poor outcome, we already know that. But why is that? It's because they have a metabolic inflammation that's going on that's causing micro-inflammation overall. And so your immune system is already fired up. How do we actually dampen that? By having good microbiome, also exercising, good diet to actually empower your microbiome to help to empower your immune system is all interconnected. And that's the reason why it's such a beautiful thing about talking about functional medicine.
Yeah, and I am someone actually who has eczema, and not very badly at all. Like the worst I had it was just on a finger, and I really feel that I healed it, and I healed it without any medications through my diet, right? So for me, eliminating gluten in particular was something that really helped me. But it's just in a real world example that I can tell that where I know that by changing my diet and fixing my gut health, you can fix these diseases. One of them being eczema in my case. Yeah. And so coming back to this, so we're kind of established now that we know that gut health is critically important for various different diseases, not just your immune system and mental health, but definitely for some allergies, like you mentioned, acne. I think you mentioned dermatitis. There was a couple other in there, I believe, that you mentioned. So we know it helps for various different things. We know that we're not talking about it enough, which is why I'm so glad to chat with you today. But
Yeah.
so how does someone, fix their gut and their microbiome in order to
Yeah.
ensure that they do have, an optimal gut microbiome?
Right. The second part that we could also discuss about is leaky gut issues. That
Okay.
leaky gut. So what basically happens is if you think about the overall intestinal and our gut permeability, it's supposed to be permeable to able to absorb some of the nutrients that you really need. The issue is that when you're dealing with chronic inflammation that goes on, that overall barrier that's supposed to lock away the pathogens or toxins and things like that from coming into your body is now being let into. And that's where the overall poor gut health is actually starting. It's really going from the leaky gut issue, but also dealing with microbiome. So how do we fix that is going to be really deals with the overall person's health and the overall issue they're dealing with. Now, obviously, you could talk about much more greater issue dealing with such as IBS or Crohn's disease and etc. But if you're just dealing with the simple thing that you want to start on a good gut health journey, the first thing you want to do is eat an organic diet. That's the first thing you need to do, especially dealing with glyphosates and other herbicides and fungicides, all those things that are affecting our overall gut microbiome. It kills it, it destroys it. At the same time, it also potentiates in dealing with the leaky gut issue. So glyphosate is something that you need to get rid of. And sometimes patient might be saying, I can't afford it. Now, obviously, you could transition into the full organic diet and looking at these things, but step by step in terms of introducing clean food, it will be the greatest impact that's going to happen in your life as well. And another thing you could do is you could work with your local produce, like your local farms or local a farm stand that you could end up having to go. And obviously, winter is a little difficult right now. But seasonal produce that you could buy locally has a good set of a local microbiome that's going to be really helpful for your gut health as well. So that's the first thing that I would recommend doing. Eating good, clean produce, clean meat as well, right? If you buy organic, great thing to do. Grass-fed meat, perfect thing to do. So that's another thing that you could end up having to add in. Second thing that I would recommend doing also is get the cleanest source of water possible. Distilled water would be the better way to doing it. If not, you could buy a good water filter that actually is able to filter out fluoride and other pathogens, including pharmaceutical ingredients, right? Now we're finding phenobarbital and some of these benzodiazepines being traced inside of our regular water supply these days. I don't know how it is in Canada, but US, for some reason, that we're finding all these crap in there. But that's the second way to actually handle that aspect of it. Third is to really work on your sleep, right? If you're not sleeping well, if you're already having sleeping issues, you have also dealing with high amounts of stress, overall stress and poor sleep affects your microbiome and your gut health, right? Including when you actually are highly stressed out, in terms of your serotonin production gets affected as well. 70% of your serotonin makes made in the gut itself, right? And your gut bacteria plays a big role in terms of making those transmitters and as well as absorbing those nutrients that you need to make those transmitters. So it's really ideal standpoint that you need to have a solid foundation in dealing with sleep, a good diet, and as well as managing stress. And if you're having trouble with those kind of things, it's very hard to get you situated and getting you fixed. So that's where I would start. Simple things, simple steps, but it's the determination of the person to make.
Okay, so number one, just to kind of recap things a little bit, is to make sure you're not putting, crap into your body that's causing it in the first place. So it's not only the things that you can add, but it's the things that you need to subtract, right? So you need to subtract the foods that are causing it in the first place. So switch over to organic. Water is kind of an interesting thing. So a lot of people have asked me quite a bit about Kangen water. And, my kind of response to that has always been, there's been no evidence that like alkaline water helps the body like in any way, shape, or form. I've seen some small evidence that adding the extra hydrogen atoms into the water is what can potentially, I don't even know if it really does, but potentially benefit from drinking this type of water. And that would just be through, increased antioxidants basically in the water, but you can get that in other ways. So, make sure you're drinking clean water. Like, how would someone do that? Just get a really good filtration system in their home?
We think that Brita does the good job in terms of, can you get Brita up in Canada? I don't know what's available.
Brita, yeah. Brita's popular here.
Okay.
We're not that far off.
Sorry. I'm just like, wait a minute, he's not from the United States. I gotta make him a little more easy for international listeners to think about this. So Brita filter is not the best source of filtration possible, because if you want to look at in terms of filtrating fluoride and as well as chemicals and including pathogens, Brita doesn't really do the job that it necessarily does. So Berkey is a great water filter company that you could look into, Berkey.
I heard that before.
Yeah, Berkey is a good one. The one that I use is called the ProPure, PROPUR. So those are two great companies that you can look into. And they actually have third-party testing to really justify and show how good of the filtration that is providing. So the ProPure USA that I have right now, 99% of the fluoride is able to get filtered, including pharmaceuticals, pathogens like Salmonella, E. coli. So those are things that I really want to look into. Now, one of the things I really learned about this year is about adding in distilled water. So there are different companies out there right now that actually you could buy distillation devices to be installed in your house to get distilled water, and that's the cleanest water you're going to get anyway. And having poor water content, it's going to really affect your microbiome. So it's all about investing in your health.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you answered that, because I'm sure some people are, a little bit confused as to how to kind of, implement that second strategy as to drink clean water. And then sleep is something, I talk about a lot too. Like I say it's even more important than nutrition and exercise.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so important. But in addition to that too, I think a lot of people are going to be wondering about, okay, so what about fermented foods? What about probiotics? So, do you think those are things that people should be adding into their diet in order to maintain good gut microbiome?
Absolutely. So when you're talking about some of the cultures like Korea, you're talking about Eastern Europeans, certain parts of Europe as well, they're really known to eating fermented food. That's where the real natural occurring probiotic you're going to get, not even just probiotic, you're getting different enzymes as well. So that's where those type of things makes a humongous difference in terms of the overall public health is actually determined. So last year, they actually looked at the COVID-19 outcome, looking at South Korea and Eastern European countries, and they found out that these two countries actually had, different two regions end up having to have a better COVID-19 outcome compared to the United States. What was a big reason is because they end up having to add in fermented food. That gut microbiome health really determined how well they were able to be resilient to fight off the virus and having the better outcome. We could talk about, South Koreans, they have probably implemented these COVID-19 measures a little better than the United States, could be. Or they could say, they use masks, maybe. But the biggest factor you have to look at is how healthy is the population. If you look at the United States right now, we're just fat individuals walking around, and we actually have the worst outcome. If you look at the overall mortality and the destruction that actually left in this country. And so it's all about the person's health and individual aspect in terms of how to empower your health, really determined in that. And so food is number one thing that you could end up having to add into your diet to really empower your microbiome. So fermented food, kimchi or sauerkraut that you could add in there. Kefir is a great source. People might be like saying that kefir contains lactose, but the way that it's actually fermented, it breaks down that lactose sugar. So if you are lactose intolerant, may not be an issue. I'm saying maybe, but may not be an issue. So those are three good food to add in. And then you could talk about probiotic, right? You could talk about lactobacillus or bifidobacterium. All those things could be a well-blended difference of bacteria putting it together to help to support your both the large intestine, the small intestine, and that could be really helpful as well. Now, in dealing with the probiotic, it could be a little difficult if you're dealing with such as SIBO, which is a small intestinal bowel issue, where you actually have a growth of that bacteria, which is causing additional inflammation. So adding a probiotic in that scenario could be a little difficult to do. Now, if we could talk about how to treat that is a whole different topic, but generally probiotic can be very, very helpful for a majority of people out there.
So I think that's a pretty good, synopsis of how to like optimize your gut health and why we should be doing it. So one last question though I have is, you said that there's the gut and there's the microbiome, and I noticed that in one of your recent posts you kind of separated those two. So could you explain to us that a little bit?
No, actually, you know what? Before we actually answer that, I know you talk about CBD a lot.
Yes.
And the cannabinoids, how that is interplayed with the gut microbiome as well. The CBD has been shown to really help to make the microbiome thrive. So that also comes into play,
Okay.
right? So CBD, the whole aspect in dealing with endocannabinoid health is that is able to create a homeostasis and a healthy environment for your body to thrive. That's including your microbiome. So I do recommend adding in CBD, a full spectrum CBD for that matter, for your overall gut microbiome health and inflammation.
Amazing. And I'm sort of just thinking out loud too, but maybe not so much in the acute effects, but maybe in the long-term effects that may be part of the reason why it does help with anxiety and a little bit with depression. Although I find with my patients it tends to help a lot more with anxiety than with depression, but it could be part of the reason why people are doing better mentally with CBD. Although obviously I think that its main mechanism of action is on the 5-HT1A receptor, and that's probably why people are getting such good relief for their mental health with it. But still, it's very nice to know that it's also helping with your gut microbiome, and by optimizing your gut microbiome, you're also going to be optimizing your mental health. So really happy that we had that discussion, and thanks for answering all those questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So go ahead.
Going back. So can you repeat that question one more time? Sorry.
I was actually just trying to say, what is the big difference between the gut and the microbiome? Just because I know that you kind of had separated those two in a post earlier that you made. Actually, I think it might have been your last post fairly recently.
Yeah, so gut function itself, you're talking about the overall gastrointestinal tract, your stomach, you're talking about your small and large intestine, your pancreas, and all that line. Those organs have to be very intact, and as well as a certain amount of inflammation that we're going through within your gut could affect how well you're able to handle certain food or allergens or other issues that might be having. But how microbiome comes into play is that microbiome has already been populated throughout the gut in itself. Actually, the amount of microbiome is actually the amount of microbiome, and in terms of the human cell, is literally 1-to-1. That's what they're looking at right now. So how well your health is and your cellular health is determined based on your microbiome health, right? It's all interplaying in terms of supporting each other. And so in order for it to have a healthy organ system, or at least a healthy body in general, have to be determined based on how healthy and how well your microbiome is populated throughout the body, right? There are microbiomes in your brain. There are microbiomes that have to play within your intestine, your digestive tract, including your other organs such as kidneys. So all those things are interplaying into your overall health. And so just don't think about microbiome as being, oh, I need to get my stomach completely well and healthy, or I need to poop at least once a day. That's a big part of it. But the overall thing is that you're talking about microbiome as being a full functional body approach in health. And so you have to look at the whole aspect in terms of a full oneness instead of being sectional that we're always used to.
Okay. Well, thanks again for completing that discussion. It's really, really important because, it's something that just doesn't get discussed too often. and it has tremendous impact on your health. And it's also something that is, fairly easy to fix in some ways, as long as you're kind of doing the things that you outlined. So thanks so much for that again. Yeah, you've made a few other posts recently that I was very, very interested in, and one of them was on saunas. And I'm a big sauna guy, and for whatever reason, actually, I haven't really chat about saunas much at all on this podcast. But I've had my sauna, I'd say, for probably around 400 days now, like just over a year. Great. And I bet I've used it 350 of them. Like I use it like not every day, but very, very close, And I did see Andrew Huberman, who you're probably familiar with, tweet out something recently about about 59 minutes a week, I think he said was optimal in terms of getting the most out of your sauna. So for myself, I probably do it a little bit more than that. And I'm not sure if I'm getting further benefit from doing it, but I just feel I do feel chronic effects from it, but acutely I just feel better after I do it, right? So that's part of the reason why I do it. So if I am using it a little bit longer than 59 or 60 minutes a week, like Huberman had recommended, I know that I'm doing it just because it makes me feel better on that day, when I actually use it. But in terms of benefits in using the sauna, why should people consider using them? And in your opinion, what would be the optimal amount of time to spend in a sauna per week?
All right, so let's discuss about there's different types of sauna out there. You have a dry heat sauna, you have wet sauna, and then now what's more popular these days is a near infrared and then far infrared saunas. So dry sauna, those are the things that you could probably end up having to use at a local gym. You go in there, you just keep yourself a little warm, and then that is it. And then you have wet saunas where you have steam being utilized, and those are good two types of saunas been used for centuries, right? You're talking about the Romans, you're talking about different Asian countries. They've been using sauna, including the Russians, excuse me. They've been using sauna for the longest time, and they know the benefit of that. Of course, it didn't have the overall complexity of what we know now in dealing with saunas, but it's been utilized for health. Now, when you talk about the near infrared and far infrared, those are deeper penetrating into your cells and into your tissues. By and large, far infrared is probably one of the best ones to use anyway. And there are companies out there that they make these like big boxy wooden saunas they could purchase. They could run around almost 5 to almost, 6 figures in terms of, up to like $10,000 to $20,000 for a sauna. But you don't have to spend that. It's
crazy how expensive they are.
It is. But you don't have to spend that kind of money these days. I mean, the small unit that I have, to remind you, I live in a 700 square feet apartment right now. And I actually have a small sauna called Relax Sauna. And as well as I have a second unit called TheraStage. And so those are, so Relax Sauna is a far infrared sauna. It has 2 semiconductors in the unit that is able to generate up to 140 degrees. And you get a deeper penetration of that infrared into your cells that is able to help to deal with detox, sweating, and so increase in circulation, weight loss, increasing metabolic health, as well as in dealing with mitochondrial support. There's studies out there so far looking at how different types of rays able to help to support your mitochondria, right? If audience out there are not aware of what mitochondria is, think about mitochondria as being like the little battery pack inside your cell. And depending on how well that little battery actually is empowered is how well your cell is going to function. So when you're dealing with chronic diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular issues, including certain chronic infections like Lyme disease, your overall mitochondria is completely hit the crap. So it's not going to work that well. And so when you're dealing with infrared sauna or any types of sauna along that region, it's going to really work well to help to reverse a lot of issues that you might be having. And so I'm not surprised that Dr. Mike is feeling a lot better afterwards, because what is he doing right now? He's already empowering his mitochondria to function better. So what I like to recommend people to do is around, if you wake up in the morning and if you have that type of sauna at home, You could do like 15 to 20 minutes first thing in the morning just to get you powered. And then if you do more than 30 minutes of the far infrared, it is able to activate your heat shock protein. And heat shock protein deals with activating
Sorry,
your lymphocytes.
how many minutes was that, John? How many
What's
minutes after until it activates your heat shock proteins?
30 minutes.
Okay, 30 minutes. Okay, sorry. Go
30
ahead.
minutes. Yeah, sorry, I was talking a little too fast.
No.
Yeah,
So
so,
I just wanted to make sure I got the figure correct. But go ahead.
yeah, 30 minutes, 30. So 30 minutes is been shown to activate your heat shock protein. So heat shock protein deals with activating your lymphocytes, and lymphocytes are really a first line defense from viral infections, right? So that is a very important part. So I like to do a 30-minute sauna. Like this week, I wasn't feeling that well, so every single day I was doing 30 minutes of infrared sauna just to get my immune system back in order, right? But if you could do that at least twice a week or so, that's a great way to do so, to really do that. And heat shock protein has been shown to be one of the factors in dealing with aging as well. So you're talking about anti-aging benefit. Well, sauna is going to provide that at the same time. So those are little tidbits in terms of how that is. I mean, you go deep into different rays and how that also plays into effect. But simple thing is that what kind of benefit are you looking at? That's the most important part. And the great thing is that now the technology is there, that the price of these things are so low compared to what it used to be. So you could easily purchase these units for about less than $1,000. Right?
Yeah. I mean, my sauna was less expensive than my treadmill. Like you tell someone you have a treadmill, and someone might say, "Oh, you're lucky," but it's something that a lot of people have. But you tell someone you have a sauna, and they kind of can't believe it. But I think it's because, again, a lot of people don't realize like how inexpensive they have become. So I'm happy about that, because if more people had access to the sauna, I think it'd make them healthier.
Yeah.
And
including detox is very important, right? So if people, right now in terms of what we're dealing with in our environment, we're full of toxin everywhere.
And how would you define that? Like, and I'm not saying that you're wrong in any way, but toxin is sort of a word that can be sometimes misused. So when you say like detoxing within the sauna, and sorry if I cut you off there, maybe you were going to explain.
I think I cut you off as well. So sorry. I got so excited right now.
No, it's all good. I love talking about saunas, and I am interested in all of the benefits to it. So I do want to understand correctly what you mean by detox. So like, what are you exactly sort of like detoxing, like objectively, when you are using a sauna?
Yeah, sure. Detoxing from heavy metals, such as mercury, lead. All those things could be deeply penetrated within your tissues. And so when you're utilizing far infrared, I mean, there's studies available showing that could be help to detox. And one of the things I forgot to mention is that you got to do it gradually on these things. Anything healthy wise, you got to do it gradually. You got to build up your overall heat tolerance and getting up there, because trying to do a full 30-minute at 140 degrees could be tough. For me to get through that, it was tough for me to begin with. And so now it's actually, there's no other issues. But when you're doing these detox, especially like heavy metal detoxing, and especially when you have different chemicals that you're dealing with, glyphosate or triclosan, all those things could be deeply penetrating to your cell. To get that out, far infrared is going to help you out. But the thing is, when you do it too quickly, it can make you sick. So you got to do it very gradually, building it up to a level that you're able to tolerate. And if you could do full 30 minutes, that's the best benefit you're going to get. However, if you do more than 30 minutes, it can actually cause dehydration. And so most important part that people forget to think about is that you need to be hydrated to detox as well. So make sure you get a clean source of water, just as what we had mentioned before, but putting back into those electrolytes you really need, including sodium and magnesium, all that line. You need those electrolytes to help to empower your overall detox mechanism to work well. So if you look at like Krebs cycle and including how the glutathione is produced, there's a lot of cofactors of that nature is playing into effect. So you need to have a good nutritional status as well to be healthy.
Yeah, what I do when I get in the sauna is I had Rob Wolf on the podcast maybe about a month ago, maybe it was 2 months ago, and he's got these salt packs, and he sent me a box of them, and I've been using those 2 to 3 times a day. So they're 1 gram in each pack. I'm a big sweater anyway, so for me, it's something that I definitely should have been including in my diet prior to that conversation with Rob. So I'm super, thankful that I had that conversation with him. But, what I do in the sauna is I pour, a packet of this salt, which has 1 gram of sodium. And then it's got, I think, 200 milligrams of potassium, 60 milligrams of magnesium. I'm pretty sure those are the right numbers.
Yeah.
And I have that while I'm in the sauna. And then I also have some salt, generally, either if it's not first thing in the morning, which it usually is, I'll have another pack also while I'm training. So that's what I do. So I make sure that, I'm very, very hydrated, but I'll also make sure that I have, plenty of electrolytes in my system as well, because I know that, after, because sometimes I lift weights, I run on the treadmill, hit the bag, and I get in the sauna. So you can imagine how much sweat I'm pouring out when I'm doing that stuff,
Sure. Yeah. Well, you should also invite Dr. James Cotello. I'm not sure if you're following or not, but he's a PharmD like myself, but he's done a lot of research on salt factor. So there is a book that he wrote called The Salt Factor. And he's been really a big proponent about utilizing salt, and how salt could be one of the things that could be fixing a lot of the sugar craving, which is true, and all the benefits that people could get. And so there's a lot of misinformation that people are getting right now that salt is bad. Actually, salt is very healthy as long as you get the right salt.
Yeah, and also too, I mean, Rob sent me a study. It was a JAMA study, so very well recognized journal, and it indicated that there was a J-shaped curve for salt intake. So meaning that too little is not good, too much is not good either, but you want to be in that sweet spot. And the sweet spot in the study was about 4 to 6 grams a day. And a lot of people are think that they should be eating about, I think, 1.5 or 2 grams, something like that. But it seems like a little bit more seems to be better. And then I think once you go past about 8 grams, it gets pretty detrimental again. And then if you're under 2 grams, it's not good. So it seems to be about 4 to 6 is in that is sort of the sweet spot, and never less than 2 and never above 8. So again, happy that we're having this discussion, because I think it's really important to have, because a lot of people, I think, are deficient in salt. And when I, started taking it, I definitely noticed, a little bit of a difference. And one area where I was really surprised is my sleep. I found that my sleep was better. And some of it may have to do with, 2 things. So part of it is because a lot of the times when I train, I do tend to train more in the evening time. So somewhere between 5 to 7 to 7:30, like somewhere in that area. But I go to bed around 10:30, 11 o'clock. So it's not too long after training, which is not really ideal. But a lot of people don't understand that, or don't know, and I didn't know this until recently, that there's an inverse relationship between salt and cortisol. So if you have a very low sodium intake, your cortisol is going to increase. And cortisol, as we know, is a stress hormone. And if you have really high cortisol, it's going to be really difficult to sleep at night. So, by working out, I'm kind of already, by working out later, I mean, I'm kind of setting myself up for a poor night's sleep, because I'm going to drive up my cortisol. But I think that, using that salt is something that really helps drive that cortisol down. And that's what allows me to get a better night, or part of the reason why I'm able to still get a good night's sleep, even though I'm training, fairly late in the day.
Yeah. Also, another factor you come into play is that you already increase your metabolic rate, so your body temperature is already high. So that could also affect your sleep as well. So I recommend taking glycine at night to lower your body temperature. So that's been one of the factors that I've noticed that could be really good for athletes in terms of recovery, because you're dealing with glycine, you're dealing with also glutathione production as well, and detox, but glycine also has different factors in there to deal with recovery, muscle rate, along with lowering your overall body temperature. So this way your recovery rate and as well as your sleep is better at night. And any types of amino acid, you should be taking that on an empty stomach. So anyone out there right now,
Just gonna ask you that.
yeah, make sure you take some glycine added into it. There are supplement companies out there right now that are adding in N-acetylcysteine along with glycine for detox support. So I like using that at night.
Okay.
So just my little tidbit. And then in the morning, I do get a pinch full of salt into my drinking water. So every glass, I add in about a quarter of a teaspoonful of regular Himalayan salt and dissolve that. And I usually like to drink at least 2 glasses full of it. And it's the type of patients I also see is patients dealing with high amounts of adrenal stress, so adrenally burnt out to begin with. And you had mentioned before how that salt affects your cortisol output. Same thing in terms of that you need to have a healthy amount of sodium intake in your body because you're overall dealing with aldosterone and adrenal health is all into play into your cortisol output. So that is very important that you need to have an adequate amount of salt when you're going through a high amount of stress. And especially as an athlete, salt is a necessary factor that you need to add in. So don't be scared to use salt when you need to.
Yeah, well, again, I'm happy that you shared the amount of salt that you consume in a day, because it definitely does make a dramatic difference in your health. And I think a lot of people are probably under consuming salt. But going back to what you said, you said that sometimes you add in N-acetylcysteine to your diet. So that's also called NAC for people who aren't familiar with it. And I know that you did a video on this earlier this year about how NAC is actually being banned, or I think it's actually banned in the United States right now. I don't know if it's coming to play in Canada yet. But why was it banned in the first place? And what were most people using NAC for?
Luckily, it has not been banned, and there was some discussion about being banned. The issue that came up to last year was that I think COVID-19, when you talk about the overall pandemic, it showed the ugliness of every human being, and that's including increased intake of alcohol. So that in itself, there were companies out marketing their overall detox or anti-hangover pills, and one of the things that they were adding in was NAC, N-acetylcysteine, N-acetylcysteine. And one of the things that they were doing is, I don't know how Canadian law is in terms of dietary labeling, but in the United States, by the FDA, when you're using a dietary supplement, you cannot put anything saying that it's going to cure or treat or anything of that line using dietary supplements. And these what the companies were doing. And so from my understanding was that there were about 3 different companies that actually got a cease and desist letter from the FDA. And so there was been some rumors saying that now FDA was going to come in and then try to ban N-acetylcysteine. And this is where overall the three-letter agency loves to do. They like to react and try to ban or try to control these things. And so this is where the overall supplement industry got scared, and they were worried that N-acetylcysteine was going to be banned because of that reason. So as of right now, has not been banned. But the second discussion that came up to be is that there's a prescription item called acetylcysteine 10 or 20% inhalation solution. It's been used in ICU and as well as patients in dealing with cystic fibrosis to loosen up the overall fibrotic scars that might be occurring within the lung. Well, that's a prescription item. And so there's been bit of a misunderstanding where that, because these acetylcysteine is a prescription item, that N-acetylcysteine might be one of the ingredients that the FDA might be coming in to ban it because of a prescription status. Hasn't happened yet so far, but if you are worried about it, I suggest you stock up a little bit. Doesn't hurt. And if it is banned, the compounding pharmacies, your local compounding pharmacy is able to compound NAC anyway, so you do not have to worry about that.
Good for you.
But in general, N-acetylcysteine is a great supplement to help to support your immune system, your detox pathway, and as well as the overall support of your lung health to begin with. So in dealing with COVID-19, NAC is some of the things that I've been recommending in general for preventive measures. So I usually recommend patients taking around 600 milligrams twice a day or 3 times a day, depending on their overall condition they might be going through. If you deal with heavy lung inflammatory conditions like asthma or COPD, you should be taking 600 milligrams 3 times a day. If not, maybe once or twice a day should be adequate.
Yeah, NAC is interesting too, because I had someone on from Revive Therapeutics here maybe about a month ago, and we were talking about a drug called busilamine. So busilamine is a thiol-based drug, and they say it's about 16 times better donor than NAC in terms of doing that. And they're finding, again, that the trial hasn't been completed yet, but they're finding that it may be actually extremely effective for the treatment of COVID-19. So I understand exactly why you may be recommending NAC for that, because again they're in now a phase 3 clinical trial with busilamine, and again the mechanism of action is similar to NAC, and that's a thiol-based drug or supplement that helps restore glutathione, and I think that's one of the main reasons why people take NAC is to help restore their glutathione levels. So I know we only have a few minutes left, and I just wanted to talk to you. Maybe we didn't get to everything I want to chat about, but it is COVID. Lots of people are wondering what your recommendations are, and while I do believe that the vaccine can help prevent severe disease in some cases, but it definitely has some side effects too. I want to focus on lifestyle interventions in terms of helping prevent the severity of COVID-19. So in terms of things that I've been recommending, obviously managing your weight is extremely important. We know obesity is a severe risk factor. Vitamin D insufficiency again appears to be a very poor risk factor. But and there's a couple other things I've mentioned before, like magnesium and zinc. Avoiding sugar, avoiding ultra processed foods, sleeping well at night. Is there anything that I'm kind of missing there in terms of advice that I should be giving to people in terms of trying to prevent severe infection from COVID-19, again in addition to the vaccine?
Muscle mass.
Okay.
Right. That's a big thing that a lot of people are being not remembering about when you're dealing with actually. So Dr. Tina Moore, she's actually very popular. Yeah. So she got COVID about 2 weeks ago, and she was very forthright in terms of discussing that on Instagram. She had been discussing about it, and one of the things that she mentioned about is that the amount of muscle wasting. She's a very active person to begin with, and she was undergoing through muscle wasting, and that's a sarcopenia aspect that people are not discussing about dealing with COVID-19. Your overall metabolic rate is actually driven up, and so poor outcome equals to having poor amount of muscle mass. So if you're a thin frame person, if you are, especially when you talk about an obese person, they might look really big, but if you look at the overall amount of muscle they have is very, very little. So weight loss is a big factor that you want to look into, obviously, to decrease inflammation. But one of the key things that's going to really help to be an anti-inflammatory aspect is utilizing weight training, right? Doing kettlebell or some type of weight-bearing exercise, excuse me. So one of the things that I always recommend doing, you don't have to do anything heavy, but things that you need to really add into is being active. And that's one of the things that you could be very active as well. Aerobic exercise could be one great thing as well, but not as great as weight-bearing exercise. So that's number one. Number two, just as Dr. Mike has mentioned about sleep, you want to get more than 6.5 hours, right? When you're dealing with less than 6.5 hours, your overall inflammatory condition actually goes up, and your metabolic rate, especially your insulin function, is just crap. So you have to get adequate amount of sleep. And if you
Okay.
are having trouble already sleeping, then obviously you could speak with some of the specialists. Functional medicine specialists are the best to do. But maybe you are not breathing well. Maybe you're not a person that is able to handle stress that well or anxiety. Those are things that you need to work on to actually help to improve sleep. There are also adaptogens. I consider CBD as an adaptogen as well. So utilizing CBD to help to improve your sleep and help to decrease anxiety level and help you fall asleep deeper and faster. Great way to do that.
And just so people know, like adaptogens, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Just so people know, adaptogens are things like rhodiola, ashwagandha. Rhodiola to me is the one that helps the most, like by far. But a lot of people do find other benefits from some of the other ones. I know, Ben Greenfield's, he says that the ashwagandha is as powerful as creatine for him in terms of muscle mass and strength gains. I haven't found that in my opinion, but I know that adaptogens is not a word that everyone is familiar with. So I just wanted to make that comment before you kept going. Sorry about that.
No, not at all. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Sometimes I end up having to talk in jargons that I completely forget who my audience is. So I apologize about that. But in dealing with adaptogens, CBD, so adaptogens, if you want to define what adaptogen is, adaptogens actually help to manage a certain aspect in your body to help to create a balance, right? So ashwagandha is a great example of a adaptogen where when you actually have a high stress going on, when you have a high cortisol level going on, ashwagandha is able to blunt that by decreasing it. And if your cortisol is too low, ashwagandha is able to increase it. That's already been shown. CBD, if you think about CBD and how that works within the endocannabinoid system is there to create a homeostasis as well. So that's why I say CBD is a great adaptogen to add into your overall health because of that reason. So that's something that you could definitely do to improve your sleep. And then the next thing that you could probably add in is melatonin. Melatonin has been shown to help to act as antiviral, but helps to support your immune system. So
yeah, and John, I tweeted out actually a study recently that they had, there wasn't very many people in the study. I think it was like 176, something like that, and had two groups of people in long-term nursing homes. They gave melatonin for about, I think it was 6 months. I'm not sure, something like that. But at the end of the study, 17 people in the experimental, 17 people in the control group died. There was only one person in the experimental group died. So, it seems to have a dramatic, again, that's only one study. So we need to look at more, and like less than 200 people. So it's not like a massive, amount of people to where you can, make these sweeping conclusions. But there is preliminary evidence that, melatonin is effective, right? And the fact that it helps with sleep in general, just makes it even more useful. And also, it's relatively safe. There's almost no side effects from it. But I hate to do this, but we're kind of out of time here now. So I'll definitely have to have you back on because there's more questions I want to ask you.
Yeah.
So Dr. John, tell everyone where they can find out about your wonderful Instagram posts and Twitter, and where can they find you online.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me on Instagram, dr.john, JOHN.PharmD, PHARMD. I'm very active in there. I do weekly Instagram live to discuss about some health topics, and as well as I have some guests on. So I'm going to have Dr. Mike on pretty soon, right?
Awesome. I would love to do it.
Yeah, we'll discuss more about the topic, but maybe we'll have a continuous discussion of what we are talking about right now. So that's one way to find me, and also my website, drkimwellness.com. You could book a consultation there, and I have some blogs that I've written up, so you could definitely do that. And I also been somewhat active on Twitter as well. So that's Dr. Kim Wellness is another my Twitter handle. So those are three ways to reach out to me. But if you're in a local New York area, I own a pharmacy in Mendon, New Jersey. So I do own a brick and mortar business that you could stop by and you could visit me. So I'm always open to have a good, healthy discussion.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all the information shared with us today. You know, I learned a lot, so I'm sure the listeners did too. And thanks again for coming on. I'll be coming on your podcast too. So thanks for the invite, and we'll chat again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.